Okay. Well, hello. This is Randy Swaim, Coach Randy Swaim from Coaching for Relevance, and it's our second episode of our podcast series. And very honored to welcome a friend and colleague for a number of years, my friend Greg Dawsey. Both of us from the aviation background, and very honored to have him as a guest on the show today. So it's a pleasure to see all you and to have Greg here. So, with that being the case, let me just allow Greg to take a minute and a couple of minutes and just introduce himself to you a little bit, share a little bit of his story and things of that nature. Go ahead, Greg. Nice to have you on the show, man.
Thank you very much, Randy, for having me. I really appreciate it. And yes, we've been colleagues for a long, long time,
Yes,
going
we
back
have
quite a while.
in
I
a
have,
lot of different roles. Yep, yep.
we
Cool.
really have. I mean,
Yeah.
not only am I a fan, but I've also been a student of yours many years ago under the ASA label, and
Yes.
I've worked with you in numerous different environments, and it certainly has been an honor, and I'm honored to be here today.
Cool, cool. Well, I'll tell you what, just chat a little bit about your journey and kind of where you've come, where you are, and all that, and that'd be
Yeah.
great, just so people know.
Wow. Well, it's been an enjoyable, a very fruitful, and a very complex journey, I would say, for me.
I
I
understand.
It really has. I wouldn't trade any of it at all. It's been very interesting, but yeah, roughly, I started my career pretty well in the military and got out of that and got into 121 aviation for a little while and kind of went through some of the pains that happened there with layoffs.
Hmm.
I did quite a bit of charter work when nothing else was available, and then finally found a really good company and flew for them for about 9 years.
Cool.
It racked up quite a bit of time. Average pilot, really enjoyed it, but then training got into my blood. I started working as an instructor, really as part time for simu flight way back
Hmm.
when,
Yeah.
and
We almost remember that name, don't we?
just almost do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and wow, what a light bulb that was in my life. I mean, I was really feeling the impact you have when you can really be a service to someone else, when you can kind of give back, right? But the
Hmm.
picture's always bigger than what it is about you,
Yeah.
and that really struck a chord with me. And yeah, so I really enjoyed it and stayed in it. Been in it for over 20 years, and it seemed like natural. Maybe 10 years ago, I kind of rolled over into the regulatory side of things after some group management,
Hmm.
and really enjoyed that too. Made good friends with the FAA, and just it's been a really good road.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. And now I think you're flying. I think you're flying and kind of leading people right now. Am I right on that?
A little bit, right. Now, my current job right now is I manage the regulatory, all of it for the commercial division of L3 Harris.
Oh, okay. Cool. Cool.
And so
Cool.
we concentrate pretty well on the heavier airplanes, 7.3, 7.5,
Yeah.
A320 series. So it was a bit of a jump. It was a part of the business that it eluded me for quite some time,
Yeah.
working in the smaller aircraft, and this has finally kind of made me feel more well-rounded, a
Hmm.
little depth to my experience, and it's a little different, but it's very enjoyable.
Oh, cool. Cool. Well, I tell you what, a good friend of mine used to work for L3 there, so I just you have my compliments. That's all, and plus in the role that you're in, and
Uh,
so yeah, cool. If you don't mind me asking, what did you do in the military? You said you were in the military initially.
right. Started out as a flight engineer in C-130s,
Oh, okay.
and then managed to make my way up to the right side, and then that was about it. Got out after about just shy of 9 years.
Oh, okay. Cool, cool. Well, I tell you what, you have my compliments on your career and just the many aspects of it. If you
Thank
don't
you.
mind me asking, just as you look back on your journey with what you're doing now and what got you here, uh, you mentioned that you got a little bit of a stream of desire for training and to all of that make a difference
I
and
did.
everything. As you think back to your journey, are there one or two defining moments that stood out that in your mind sort of may have led you to that or maybe created that within you?
Well, there actually was. Interesting enough, um, when I moved over. I'll go back to the days when I was training as a pilot on the basically the Part 61 side, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I had an instructor who I really believe went above and beyond. I know everybody will say that, but what I mean by that is this guy would take me out and go prove to me that I had talent I didn't know I had, that I had the ability that I didn't know I had. He would take me to my limit and then make me
Cool.
take that next step. And so flash forward a number of years when I got into the professional training environment, which was semi-flight at the time, I wanted to repay that. I wanted to mock what he had done because I saw the effect that it has when you don't have as much confidence as you probably should have as an individual or as a pilot or as a person, and somebody knows it's there. It's the journey to go find it. That is what I wanted to duplicate. And that was the driving force by not accepting mediocrity.
Cool. And I'll tell you, I just have to share because and I know you know this already, but just for the listeners, that's a key point of leadership. When
Yeah.
somebody kind of recognizes that in you and takes you there, that's what leaders do. Is and everything. So they just so they totally have my compliments on that, and you have my compliments for your vision of your journey and why you're doing what you're doing now. Yeah, totally have my compliments on that.
Wow. Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm my firm belief. I guess my tagline has always been, you know, the best books you've ever read, you never really got it from reading the cover. You got to get it. You
That's
got
a
to
good
get it.
point. That's a good point.
You got to get into it. And
Yeah.
so I think we all have those talents, and every person I've ever met or ever managed or ever worked with as a colleague, you cannot judge them by your impression because you
Yeah.
take them to their limits and then you give them the freedom and creativity to go further, and you will find the amazing things people can do. That is the part I love about it.
And it's interesting with what you just said there, because it's very aligned. You'd be surprised at how many times working with clients myself that are pilots. In fact, the last time I did this was just a couple of days ago, kind of thing, where my debriefing comment is take the rote academic facts that you know and
Right.
put them into an operational perspective. How should that affect your decision making and to what extent? And that's an awareness and a realization that people really have to have when they're in that
Oh, yeah,
role.
it is.
Cool, cool. Well, that's awesome. Like I said, Greg, you totally have my compliments on that. And one of the things I know with kind of one of the areas you want to kind of get the subject going, it's interesting that, and I'll just say this as sort of an introduction to that. You mentioned back in the days of semi-flight, and I was actually working for one of their competitors at the time, and I was happy working there. Not
Yeah.
it was a good role because I came into work there right about the time Part 142, which for the listeners is the regulation that governs flight training and pilot training and
Right.
everything. That was around the 1992, 1993 timeframe. And yes, yes, I've been doing this a long time, kind of thing. But it was interesting that we went up to Oak City one time, and it was a conference for what 142 was going to be, and we were kind
Mhm.
of part of that. And one of the guys there, I had was told that he had just come over from semi-flight at the time, and I kind of went, Well, during a break, I went up and I asked him. I said, "What do you think of semi-flight?" Because I knew their name, but I didn't know anything else about them.
Right.
And I don't think I'll ever forget his answer. He said, "Well, you know what? They do a lot right." And he said, "I'll tell you, if they got an infusion of cash, they'd be competitive overnight."
Yep.
And I said, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah." And guess what? Just 6 years later or something, I came over to semi-flight too. So it's yes, and I know that's kind of in line with kind of what you're talking about. So I know
Exactly.
you wanted to take this to a key aspect that sometimes sort of people forget about. So let me just let you kind of take the lead on that and chat a little bit about your vision on that topic.
Well, I've had the blessing of working with most of the major 142 organizations, and
Hmm.
I can tell you that the the number of personnel that they have is really irrelevant. it's what I look for when I join a new organization is what's your DNA? Because whatever your DNA is what is going to be spread throughout everybody in that organization, and eventually that's what's going to get delivered to your clients. Whether you want it to or not, that's what happens.
Yep.
And I look for that trait. And one of the things that I have found is that the smaller or the lesser known, we'll say that for right now,
Okay.
have a tendency to be more free with their creativity. And when they allow their instructors or their personnel at all levels to have the freedom to be creative, you find solutions to problems that otherwise they may not be able to fix. Not only do you solve problems, but you create a bond within the organization that says, I got your back. If you can't figure something out or you get into a bind, I got your back. I see those same companies or other companies that become more commercialized or larger, or they start becoming more strict with that, and the company loses that identity. And that I think is a crime, because once you take that away from the employees, once they're burdened with some processes that have to be done, you lose a lot of that ability for them to shine as individuals. And I've noticed that. When I graduated with my bachelor's, I wrote my dissertation on Herb Keller.
Oh, yeah.
The way that I compared it then, and I would compare it the same way today, he was an attorney. He was not a pilot. The man did the smartest thing he could possibly have done. He surrounded himself with line qualified aviation professionals and listened to what they had to advise him. So in management, if you're listening to people that are working for you without that boots on the ground knowledge, you're not necessarily going to get productive information. Therefore, you can't make productive decisions.
Very good.
When you surround yourself with people who know what they're doing, there is almost no way you're not going to progress and become efficient and become everything that you want to become.
You know, that's awesome, and you totally have my compliments on that. And I'll ask you another question, which just lets you kind of explore that for a minute here. But I will tell you that a lot of what you're talking about is I have seen in a lot of the clients that I've worked with. In fact, it's sort of interesting. I had one client. There's one operator. As you know, I'm the examiner for a number of 135 operators out there.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
And I was working with two of their co-pilots one day, and at the end of the co-pilot, I just found this kind of awe-inspiring. We were getting ready to come off motion and come out of the simulator, and the guy that was in the left seat turned around and said, "You know, Randy, we always really appreciate working with you when we come here for training." I said, "Really?" I said, "Well, golly, I'm humbled. Thank you. I mean, I appreciate that." And he looked at me and he said, "We always get valuable stuff from you." And his partner turned around and said, "Well, good stuff." And I went, "Well, okay, thank you." You know, kind of thing, kind of thing.
Whatever.
Yeah. And, but what was interesting is, he said, "You know, I can think back through a lot of my career where you could see that it was almost like that in some cases the instructor was," and he wasn't talking about any particular group or company, because he had been through different training organizations under different companies and all that. But he said you could almost see where the instructor thought their job was to just get you through the squares, go home and get paid.
Right.
And I went, yeah, you know, and that's a very big difference with what you're talking about. That client kind of exemplified that in his perception and experience of it. Yeah. And, well, I'll tell you what, well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to just throw another tail end onto that. We just got back. Some friends of mine from Alaska on a fishing trip, and this was a brand new charter boat captain, and he didn't do a very good job. And we were having a very realistic conversation when it was done. And he made the comment. He said, "You know, there's just days when I'm tired, and I just admit I really don't put a whole lot of effort into it." I said, "You know, it's funny you say that. If I have that kind of day at the office, people die." So putting this in perspective, giving somebody everything that you've got, whether you're an instructor, whether you're ground personnel, whether you're working in records or you're whatever you're doing, somebody benefits when you give them your 100%. Somebody will feel the consequences when you don't.
There you go. You have my compliments on that because you're right. You are so right on that. And I like I like what some people, I've been asked in my career that going with what you said about people dying. They said, how do you handle it when knowing you're carrying all those people in back of you? And I
Yep.
look at them and I say, well, I'm in the lead seat. I
Yeah.
said, you know what? If I take care of me, they'll be okay.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah.
And there is a humorous aspect of that to it.
There is.
So, but that is a key point that I think needs to even become more so, not just in the training and development of people in aviation, but I think in any business,
It is. Sure.
largely. And I know that one of the things that yeah, you were sort of talking about is a little bit about the business and company aspect of it. So go forward with kind of what your thought was on that you shared with me.
Well, just to talk about what you just finished, there's no difference. So if you're a pilot, these people in the back are depending on you. If you're a manager, no matter what level in a company, the
Yeah,
people you manage are your passengers. They can't get to their destination and finish their journey if you don't do your job.
there you go.
It really is that simplistic. And I think the parallels are amazing in terms of when you look at it from that aspect, is that when you manage someone or someone's managing you, they have a responsibility
Hmm.
to develop everything by giving you the opportunities to show what you're capable of doing so that the group as a whole reaches their destination safely. I
Hmm.
really do. And I think that's the one of the tent poles for management nowadays is, you know, once you become a manager, it's very easy to sit in your office one day and say, I'm the boss and
Yeah.
everybody must do what I say. Okay, that's a true fact. How about this? I'm the boss and everybody that works for me is depending on me, because
Hmm.
the weight that places on you should align you and keep you in your swim lane as
Yeah.
opposed to trying to get outside and do something and impress someone with your ability.
Yeah.
And I think that gets missed a lot. I really do.
And I think it gets missed a lot in companies today in many areas. So
Very
yeah, I
much.
think that's a key aspect of leadership about how are you really leading people versus just playing manipulation games, and
So
it's
so
huge.
many. You're right. So many things that you have stated on your sites and what you put on LinkedIn and things. If you take those in the context in which it was intended, and you made a book out of them, it would be the first Bible for management.
All right, thank
It
you,
really
thank
would.
you.
It is absolutely. I have copied those so many times and sent them, saying, "Listen, this is true. You need to pay attention to this because two people can look at anything and you can get two different opinions.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, understanding the responsibility when you're managing, when a company is administrating a group of people,
Hmm.
understanding that responsibility should pretty well set the guidance for you in terms of what you need to do to get them where they need to be."
There you go. Yeah, yeah. And that is cool. That is key when you're talking about leading a team, particularly in a changing environment. As you know, one of my groups and a trademark concept for me is the concept of organizational maneuverability,
Yes,
about taking pilot lessons and leading teams in a rapidly changing, unpredictable environment where the factors involved are not always going to be just purely academic.
right.
And can your people at the point of attack make that right call for radical solutions, as you said, when you're not there?
It's
And
true.
that's a huge part of what you're talking about. You have my compliments on that.
You can draw that same parallel again. I've got a good friend of mine. He went with us on this trip.
Hmm.
He's not a pilot, and I asked him because I could tell he was nervous about this long flight to Alaska. He said, "You
Yeah.
know what? I don't want to know how it works. I just want to believe in the magic." And I said, "But the bottom line is this: for those of us that fly, it's not magic.
Yeah.
Managing is not magic either. I
Yeah, that's
know
right.
I know the radar may look nasty in certain times, COVID or whatever the case may be, layoffs or whatever. The radar may look nasty,
Hmm.
but we don't look at it like I hope for the best. We actually plan and plot a course and we drive through it knowing what we're expecting as an outcome.
Yeah.
I just think it's important.
And it truly is important. And as you correctly said, there's a whole lot of alignment between what we see in our aviation
Yeah,
career and journey with leading teams in any arena. And let me throw one other question out, because it's kind of what you were talking about with the aspect of sort of standardization versus creativity
mhm,
in your people and things like that.
right,
Um, where do you see the line of difference between those that perhaps you shouldn't cross? You know what I mean? I mean, if one person's going that way, one person's going that way, that can be an issue, unless the situation warrants it, kind of thing. But from a leader standpoint, from a kind of a manager standpoint, um, uh, uh, how do you see that? How would you kind of approach two people that seem to be one? Because you'll hear this. I've heard some managers say, "Well, we got to get more standardized." Well, I
right,
got about three different coaching questions I would ask them following that on.
right.
But where do you see that, in your mindset, in your thoughts, where would you see that difference point between those two, as far as, this is valuable? Okay, sometimes we don't want to get too creative, but yeah, we want to, and where does that how does that kind of image in your mind?
Got it. Got it. I understand. And ironically enough, as you know, a number of years ago, um, I was sanctioned to actually kind of run some standardization committees that we had because that problem cropped up. And I'll say this to begin with. I honestly believe that when a company, an organization, a project, whatever gets unstandardized, that's a failure in management. And I
Hmm.
believe that. I'll tell you why.
Hmm. Go
If
ahead.
if if I do a proper pre-flight briefing, nothing in that sim session should be questionable to anybody that's actually having to do the work in there.
There you
If
go.
I don't, I've got pilots thinking two different things, going two different directions, expecting two different outcomes. So, did I brief this? Are we on the same page in terms of what our end goal objective is? Because if
Hmm.
we are, then I want that creativity to help solve how are we going to get there. That's
Hmm.
the part I think you can rein in. If you've got people that are going different directions, or that comment comes up, we've got to get standardized, you really need to go back to basics. Where did it start? What is the objective? And then I think you'll understand right then why maybe some of the people that are involved in this project are believing two different things or wanting to go in different directions.
Hmm.
I really do believe that's the core.
And I think that there's some depth of truth to that. I remember, in fact, I think I shared it with you. I don't think I shared it on the video here, the last episode, but I shared it on the PBNN radio show that I was on when I was the uh, site manager and the contract rep at Griffiths Air Force Base.
Mhm,
I was standing there, and I'm the boss of everybody, but I
mhm,
could hear they are exploring this very unique approach to things. And you
right.
know what? I could tell where they're going. And I said, you know what? Let's ride this horse for a second, see where it
Yep.
goes. And
Yep.
I let them go. And they were going to kind of come up with this idea. And one of them, who was one of our co-pilots, was going to sit down and take some notes. And he was halfway down in his seat. He didn't sit all the way down, but he all of a sudden he realized the boss is here. And so he froze and he looked right at me. And all I did is I nodded at him and I winked at him,
Okay.
and he smiled and he sat down and he started taking some notes. And there is a time where that's appropriate, and with some
Absolutely.
of the stuff you're talking about. But that is key when in businesses or in aviation with your flight crew. So yeah.
When you let people in a project have that freedom to unleash whatever is in them, we're all part of our background. Our background kind of shapes who we are and how we think.
Hmm.
You validate their importance to the team.
There you
And
go.
if there's one thing that we're looking for, no matter who you work for or what you do, we are all looking for that validation, because that is self-worth and it boosts your confidence.
And you know what? If you can make your people believe that they can change the world,
Yes,
they'll go change the world.
don't go change the world.
And that's a key aspect. It's a little bit of a modified quote from Lolly Daskell, but it's a good quote
Yeah,
because it is right. If you make your people, if they're scared to do anything because you're just going to kind of tie a rope around their neck,
right.
they're not going to be able to meet solutions,
You're
kind of
absolutely
thing.
right.
And so all of that is a key part of that.
Hmm.
And so let me ask you this. Just I know we got about 5 minutes left.
Okay.
A good discussion. I so appreciate what you brought. But let me ask you this: just as you look forward, because obviously we're in a kind of unique time in history, as you will.
Yeah.
Uh, as you look forward with everything that you're talking about, what do you see as perhaps the one or two greatest values going forward in this industry, in the businesses, in the operators? And what do you see as the two biggest risks that maybe somebody would not ever think about or not expect?
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's it's a good complex question.
Oh, sorry about that. Didn't mean to make it as complicated.
No, nothing wrong with that. Yeah, I should have studied the test guide for this one.
So, yeah.
So I think for the first time, I don't know if it's cyclical because I've only really been in the industry, I guess, a little over
Yeah.
30 years, maybe not enough, but I think we're in the middle of a serious shakedown. Every environment, every aspect of aviation right now is really got a microscope on it in terms of what have you done, how do you act, what are you going to do, and how are you going to recover from what COVID has done basically to our industry,
Yeah.
amongst other things. So I think I don't think I don't think those tracks have been laid yet in terms of what's the proper way. I think we'll look back at it 10 years from now and decide this was good, that was bad, whatever. I
Yeah.
think everybody's scratching right now trying to figure out what they can do. What we do realize now is that we have to think ahead in terms of what we want, where we want to be and what we want to do. And what I mean by that primarily is um, it's a little embarrassing, I think, to have the pilot shortage that we have in
Hmm.
so many levels of our industry.
Yep.
With that being said, I think the FAA needs to get involved and decide, is 65 really the best you can do for flying? If you can hold a medical with the experience level that you've got, shouldn't we look at maybe extending that or changing the rules a little to keep
Hmm.
that experience in the cockpit?
Hmm.
I think that training needs to change in terms of where and how pilots are coming through. To what you said a minute ago about checking the boxes, that has to go away.
Yes.
You're not dealing with a pilot that you're never going to see again. You're dealing with a pilot who's going to be flying 240 people 5 years from now.
Hmm.
If you
Hmm.
forgive those things now, who will forgive them then? So I think that's one of the consequences of the way that we have been training people in the past, just meeting the standard. I don't think
Yeah.
that's going to work going forward. I don't think that's going to be the recipe for what we're looking to do.
And
I
I'm
think
Go ahead.
we got to get smarter. Oh, go
Yeah.
ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I am in 150% agreement with you. I mean, that's bad math, but it's good synergy
Yeah.
and everything. But yeah, it is. We got to rethink a lot of that going forward, and to be able to let people really make the radical decisions correctly.
Right.
When and you know this, the term that the Canadian authorities use when startle and surprise comes on scene, because you know
Absolutely.
what, and when business happens or in your flight crew, there's going to be that one thing that you would have never predicted. Can
Right.
your team handle it? And
Right.
that's a key aspect of what you're talking about.
I had a I had a concept. I don't know where it came from. I'm gotten quite a bit older now, and I don't necessarily trust all my thoughts.
You
But
too, you too.
where'd that come from? So, but people get so excited when their kids, join around the middle school range, and they come home one day and say, here's a packet for the Boy Scouts, because everybody's already gotten accustomed to what the Boy Scouts can do. What
Yeah,
is wrong? What is wrong with taking your middle schooler and coming home with a packet saying, this is a core course to get me involved in aviation 10 years from now? What is
hmm,
wrong with that? I think when we're approaching them post high school, or maybe entry level in college, it's too late. I
yeah,
don't think that's where the chain needs to start.
yeah,
This could be something that you can do, and you know what? Possibly, just possibly, we address bringing your grades up because you have a long term goal that's going to require you having certain skill sets.
yeah,
You know,
yeah. And
why
and
not?
it's and it's interesting. Back when my great granddaughter and grandson were like 6 and 3 years old, we
Mhm.
took them over and put them in the Lear 31 sim. I didn't come up on motion or anything like that, but
Right.
we let it take off, and it let them. And my granddaughter standing there looking down, he goes, "Look at those people! They're so small." And of course, this is a sim session, but you
Yep.
know what? They caught a little vision of
Yes, they did.
possibilities. And
Yep.
so, yeah. Well, listen, I know it's about a half an hour. I want to be respectful of your time. I thought you brought some amazing stuff. Let me just kind of offer you, Greg, the opportunity to say anything that you want, tell anything that you want as we think about closing down for today. I definitely appreciate everything you brought. And it's always been an honor and a privilege to work with you for the
Uh,
last, I think, 18 years kind of
I
thing.
I can reciprocate that, no problem at all. No, I think the only thing that I would say is, and I know that a lot of people share the same thought with me. We want to thank you. We want to thank you for bringing this out, for giving this platform where people can actually see really the core course, that what your grandma would tell you how to act if you were going to manage a business. This is really it. I hate to borrow from the university, if you will, but
Yeah,
but it
yeah.
really is. I mean, these are the common sense things that we've gotten away from as a society, and it's affecting businesses. I saw a statistic the other day that 55% of the people quit a job because they don't like their bosses.
In fact, the vast majority of people don't leave because of the company.
Right.
They leave because of the bad leadership.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's crazy. Where's that talent going? What are we losing as a consequence because of that? And
yeah,
you're giving everybody that attends the show or listens to your show or watches your podcast, you're giving them an opportunity to see what you may be experiencing isn't the only way, right?
there you
And you
go.
know it's got to be effective because the very first line in any regulatory guidance from the FAA says this is a means to meet an objective, but not the only one.
There you go. And you know what?
I love it.
That's right. That's right. So cool, cool. Well, listen, Greg, I definitely, like I said, I'm very honored. It was great to catch up with you. It was great to see the picture of you holding those fish on
Oh yeah.
Facebook and stuff and stuff. But it's been an honor to work with you. It's been an honor to be here today. And we'll definitely look forward to maybe having a cup of coffee or something sometime
I'd
when
love it.
you're off or whatever. That'd be great.
I would love it. Thank you.
Well, take care. Listen, you have a good one, Greg, and we'll talk to you again. Thank you.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Bye.